So, Joe, we continue on our journey. Actually, we're pretty much at the end of our journey here. We've been doing a lot of deep dives for teams. Tonight, we're going to get to our favorite team on this show, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, because they have shown love to Ruffino and Joe show. But tonight, we go to Coach McGuire's squad. Now, I will say a season ago, I was really high on the Red Raiders, and they disappointed me going 7-6. Joe, what do you think about them going into this season, though? They got some talent on offense at wide receiver. I'm really interested to see what you think of them going into this year.
I'm definitely not at the same spot that we were at last year. As much as I love getting excited about Texas Tech, I am not going to get burned again like we were last year when we decided that we wanted to pick them to be the sleeper to win the Big 12. The Wyoming game really hurt us. But as frustrated as you could get for the season not panning out the way that it could, they finished last year really strong. You know, we forget that they upset Kansas, that they had a really nice win over UCF, and I know that they didn't look great against Texas, but they strung together some pretty strong wins in that last month of November. Mm-hmm. My optimism always comes back to the one guy that we've hyped up on this show a ton, and that's Tahj Brooks. I understand that there's running back talent in the Big 12, but I don't see a guy that's as explosive and as dominant as he is. Ollie Gordon actually is probably the only other guy, but I'm an idiot for saying that. Ignore it. Okay, him and Ollie. He is extremely integral for their success, and we saw in the games where he was able to take over how integral he was for them being an unstoppable force. Mm-hmm. I really love watching Tahj Brooks, man. I go watch him over and over again. I get juiced up watching his tape, by watching his highlights. That wasn't a pause moment. That wasn't.
I get juiced up.
To finish my point, I really think that there are some question marks on this roster. Like I quarterback, I know that Baron Morton started some games last year for them towards down the stretch. I don't know if that is the consistent guy that they turn to for the rest of the year. Offensive line, defensive line, there's not exactly a ton of premier NFL talent, big name guys. But there's a really high potential here for them to be a strong team in the Big 12 in 2024.
Look, they did go out and get two offensive linemen that I think will start, left tackle, left guard. Joe, I do think that they might have some weaponry at receiver. You know, you bring in Micah Hudson, the 5-star wide receiver that they got in last year's class. You bring in Josh Kelly, too, the 6-year senior from Washington State, who was Cam Ward's #1 receiver last year. Joe, I don't know if offensively they might not get some things going under Coach McGuire. Look, I think that they got a really good running game. I don't know about Morton coming back. Look, he takes over last year, has 15 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, about 2,000 yards or about 1,700. I actually think that offensively they might be all right. You know, because when you got elite dudes on the outside, Joe, and you got pretty decent offensive line with a really strong running back and running game, I'm not going to say that Texas Tech is going to beat somebody and surprise us. Wouldn't surprise me, though, because of the talent that they actually do have on the offensive side of the football. But I got a big concern with them on defense. And as much as I like Coach McGuire, as much as I like Texas Tech and Red Raiders, baby, I'm with you. I'm always going to be there with you. The problem, Joe, they can't get after the quarterback. They cannot – it is one of the wilder things that I have seen from a defense last year who just can't get to the quarterback. Joe, here's something interesting. They had 11 sacks that left their team last year through their two premier pass rushers, okay? 11. Joe, they're not returning hardly any production getting after the quarterback. Can someone like Charles Esters step up this year, had 4 sacks a season ago? I don't know. But there is a glaring weakness of them not getting after the passer that I think that they got to resolve now.
And generally defensively, they didn't have a ton of departures last year. I mean, like they're bringing back
a lot of dudes.
Yeah. But they did lose their 2 most important players, which was DeDorian Taylor Demerson, who was drafted by the Cardinals, was a really underrated safety prospect in last year's draft. And Miles Cole was not a productive defensive lineman for them, but an athletic freak. To lose a guy like that, and then the year prior they lost Tyree Wilson, they haven't really found that next player. I am adamant about saying, and when you were arguing with me about Notre Dame, you don't need a first-round pick, unstoppable, unblockable force, especially in the Big 12. But you need bodies. You need big bodies. You need guys that...
You knew what I was trying to say.
It is a position where if you have a stout defensive line in the Big 12, you're going to cause problems. It's why I'm so high on Utah, because they've got a defensive front that the Big 12 typically does not see. So if there is any area where they're slowed down, they struggle a little bit, I could totally see that being because we don't really know what this defensive line is going to look like.
Joe, what are we talking about with Texas Tech if they don't lose to Wyoming, they don't lose to West Virginia, they don't lose to BYU by 2 scores? Joe, they were in a lot of one-possession football games. I mean, obviously got blown out against Texas, okay, the playoff team. Kansas State had a late score there to kind of separate themselves from them. Joe, teams that are losing games by one possession always astonish me because you're playing up to a lot of the talent that you're playing. You're just not getting over that hump. Normally what gets you over that hump is when you have a lot of guys that return into your program that have been there like, hey, man, we can't do this offseason. If we want to win those games, we got to take it to the next step. And I think Coach McGuire is a really good coach. They do bring back Ben Roberts. It was their leading tackler last year, 107 tackles. CJ Baskerville as well, the safety. Look, I want to be high on them. I think they got a great culture. I think that they've done a really good job there, especially at recruiting, okay, in that state when you're probably the 4th or 5th best team in the state when it comes to recruiting. But, Joe, I don't know. I think maybe they could get to 8 wins, maybe, okay, but I'm very skeptical of them in that front 7. So I want to be high on Texas Tech. I want to be high on Coach McGuire, and I think he's a great coach. I want to be a little bit more cautious. I say about 8-4, 9-3, and maybe they'll feel good about a schedule, a season like that in the Big 12.
I'm super excited if there is potential for Micah Hudson to get onto the field because, I mean, that was a big deal that they were able to sign him. I would love to see if they could maybe pursue and convince more premier guys from the state of Texas to come and play for them. Outside of that, though, looking at their schedule, just to kind of look ahead, they got a pretty tough slate that was handed to them. They play Arizona, Iowa State, Colorado, Oklahoma State, West Virginia were some of the tough games that I tagged. Going to be tough sledding in some of these. But I think 8-4 is an accomplishable hit for them. Could they exceed that? It all comes down to, is there somebody that we're missing that's ready to take that next step on defense? Is Morton a guy that can take that big next step? Don't have enough of a sample size to really know that for sure.
Well,
8-4 those, then 7-5, 8-4 those, the number I'm hitting on.
My question would be, okay, Joe, if they had better quarterback play in the beginning of the season, are they 9-3?
Honestly, Tyler Shuck really held them back last year.
Okay. You probably do beat Wyoming. You probably do beat West Virginia. You probably do beat Joe, I'm going to be real with you. Joe, are they in a better game against Oregon? A team last year that was we thought was a really good football team, right? Throughout the year. I mean, Joe, they lose to them by 8, and if they had better quarterback play, there's no telling what happens. So they have potential. Joe, they don't have a tough early stretch, though, right? They got Cincinnati, Arizona State, North Texas, Washington State, and Abilene Christian. There could be a very strong possibility going to Tucson that you have an undefeated Texas Tech Red Raiders. And then, Joe, I don't know if you don't have, if they can't beat Baylor. What is TCU this year? So I do look at these games, though, Joe, and say we've broken down a lot of these teams. Mm-hmm. Actually, damn near a lot of them. I don't think that they couldn't beat any of these teams that they play, though.
Well, everything that we've talked about with the Big 12 specifically. it is such a balanced conference that even if they faced off with a Kansas State, an Oklahoma State, who are supposed to be considered to be the top teams in the conference, there is not much of a separation of talent. It's a really good example of why West Virginia last year, despite them bringing all these new faces in, still were able to succeed and have an unexpectedly good season. It's because if you have the group of guys and they hit the ground running and they build momentum, they're close matched enough with the games and the teams that they're facing in these games that you could finish with a really good, strong record. That's why I say that 9-3. I think it is absolutely on the table for them.
It's kind of more on the table than anything, because Joe, I don't think Arizona. We talked about Arizona, Joe. We have more worries about them. Okay, can they beat Arizona in Tucson? Baylor, my man, dude, Dave Aranda's on it. He's struggling in Waco. Joe, what is TCU? I mean, we're going to talk about Colorado next here. Joe, are you 1,000% sure that they can't go 8 games into the schedule and not say, look, man, we can win that football game. We can win that football game. We can win that football game. At the end of the year, as you mentioned, is probably the toughest part because you have West Virginia and you have Oklahoma State. But Joe, when momentum starts getting, if you get to Oklahoma State 9-1, 10-1, then what? So look, here, you know what? I changed my mind.
Yeah,
Here come the Red Raiders. Here come the Red Raiders.
Hold on a minute.
Playoff
Did you just say 10-1? All right, stop it. No,
Playoff
I'm cutting
sleeper.
you. No,
the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I just convinced myself.
Right, but calm yourself. No, we're not. There's no 10-1 happening. Come on. Don't set me up. Don't set me up to pay me into being the hater. Let's be a little realistic here. You're trying a little too hard.
You're being a hater. We're on the Texas Tech green. We're on the Texas Tech train here.
Us saying 9-3
can stop Tahj Brooks.
Saying 9-3 was a very generous and fair thing to put on the table.
They got one of the best receiving cores in the country. Morton's going to come in and look like an All-American.
Stop it. It. Now you're just being patronizing to these fans.
No, I'm dead serious.
You're being patronizing.
I am dead serious.
They know you're bullshitting.
Red Raiders are a playoff sleeper. I'm back at it.
Stop it. Jesus Christ.
They are. You can't convince me otherwise. All right.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct, personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/trainingcamp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training's expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.